Hi, in this video I want to get a little bit more into transformations, and I also want to talk a little bit more about brushes and how to use brushes on masks, as well as doing a few adjustment layers with clipping masks. So we're going to kind of cover a bunch of it just to review and just to give you some more ideas how these tools work. Now, as far as transformations go, and pretty much every other tool in Photoshop, there are an infinite number of ways that you might apply this to a different image, and I can't possibly show them to you all, but I will try to show you a couple of different ways so that you get some different ideas how to use these tools. Okay, so I have a couple of images pulled up. I have this photo of Joshua Tree that I've actually developed and used some kind of unusual color tones on it, so it's a little bit different. And then underneath it I have this photo of Montana, this railroad and this shack in Montana. And I'm actually going to put, what I really want to do is I really want to put this railroad into the Joshua Tree scene. Okay, let's go ahead and bring this on. The first thing I want to do is just bring this down underneath the layer because the railroad is going to go on top of Joshua Tree, and so that should be on the top image here. Now what I want to do is just create a mask out everything but that railroad. And I'm going to select it, but I'm going to do something pretty different from what we've done before. I'm just going to use the lasso tool. There are times when just hand selecting with the lasso tool is the very best way to get started. You notice I'm being pretty messy. I don't really mind because I'm just trying to get a starting selection, and I know I can clean things up with my brush. I'm going to create a mask. And there we go. We see Joshua Tree. We see all sorts of problems, of course, but that's how it works when you're getting started on an image. One of the first things is the aspect ratio. I'm not really going to worry about that now because I am going to keep the aspect ratio of Joshua Tree. I'm going to fit the railroad in rather than making it larger. So we're going to leave that alone for a second while we just make a little adjustment to the color and density of that railroad, because you can see it's too light and it's also just not quite the right color. It's a little purpley. And so I'm going to go ahead and start in the curves layer so I can adjust the exposure. Now the way the curves layer works, I haven't shown this to you before, these are the highlights here. This is white, this is black, and all the rest of this are the midtones. And here we have the histogram. So if we grab the center of the midtones and pull down, it darkens it. And if we grab and pull up, it's going to lighten it. That's the general rule. Now notice that it's actually lightening the entire image. We don't want that. We actually just want to do the railroad. And so we're going to clip it. We can do this down here. And it's just going to clip it to the layer below. Remember, you can't clip anywhere. You can only clip to the layer below. There's a couple other ways to do it, but that's the main thing to remember. You can also do the clipping mask up here. I can release it here. I can make it again or use the shortcut, but my preference is usually just to clip this little thing here. Now if we move this up or down, notice that it's only happening to the railroad. And I'm just going to take the midtones down a little bit. That's much better. Maybe the highlights. And that is much better. We've adjusted the exposure using curves. Now I want to go to color balance. Another area that I probably have not shown you has some wonderful tools. And again, before I get started, I'm going to clip it because I don't want to change the color balance of everything outside of there. Now, color balance, we have these several options. We have midtones, highlights, and shadows. And we also have these pairs of colors. These are the primaries and the secondaries in photography. What I'm noticing here, if we zoom in, is that this is a little bit purple in the midtones. That's magenta. So I'm just going to very gently pull it over. And that really helps. One of the problems is it's also making the greens really pop up here, but that's something we'll deal with later. There's not a lot of greens in Joshua Tree, but we're going to go ahead and live with it while we adjust it. I could, just to help a little bit, I could just make it a tiny bit yellow, and that'll help it to match a little bit more. We're going to get into that more as we go forward. Okay, now keep in mind through this whole demo that I'm doing this very quick sort of 15-minute demo of an image that really, if I were working on it seriously, I would take a few hours. So there's going to be imperfections, things that I can't fix during this time period, but you'll get the gist of things. Okay, so let's go on to the next step, and that is to see if we can fit this railroad into the scene. So I'm going to go ahead and pull back so you can see. Now you can see that we actually have a lot of extra space, but I want to stick with the aspect ratio of the original. So I'm going to move him over and go ahead and crop. Now remember that when you crop in Photoshop, unless you check this, you're going to keep all of those crop pixels. So don't worry about losing anything. We can always get it back if we need it. So let's move on to the next stage, and that is involving transformations. I'm going to transform the railroad. So I'm going to select that layer and do Command T, just like I showed you in the last video. Now, remember that with transform, if I grab a corner, if I just grab a corner when I get started and not hold any other key, it's going to transform it proportionately, right? And that's actually working pretty well, putting it down here, but I don't really want to lose the width and the drama at the top of that. So let's go back and let's try it a different way. The other thing you can do when you're in the transform tool, we'll go back, is you can hold the shift key down. That's true on both a Mac and PC. And then when I do this, it's actually going to squish it down, which in this case I really like because it can put that right underneath that lip right there. I can also pull it out like that. Okay, great. Now that is fitting much better. But of course, you are noticing that terrible, terrible, weird selection. So let's go ahead and work on that next now that we've got it in place. So the way we're going to do this is on the mask and with the brush tool. So B, we grab the brush tool and let's check it out. Let's check the size. I want it a little bit bigger. I'm going to use the bracket keys for that. So I want it right over that. We're going to just mush this stuff out of here. And I want it absolutely soft, no hardness whatsoever to get started. And I want it on 100% opacity to get started. And then I can just take this, I'm on the mask, I'm working in black, and if I just use my brush, it just takes that edge out and makes it very smooth. And already it's looking a lot better. It's blending in a little bit. Now I'm not doing that top edge because this brush that I selected is too large for that top edge, taking some of that green out that was bugging us before, or bugging me, I should say. I don't want to assume it was bugging you. There we go. And I get almost up to there, but now I need to make my brush smaller so that when I get up to this area, it doesn't start to take out the railroad. Now I'm leaving that edge. We're going to come back to that. I'm going to go ahead and just take this out, the bush, because I'm going to sort of skew this so it turns off and goes into the trees. I don't need that there. Doesn't feel right. And I can leave some of this fuzzy edge on there. It's not a problem. We're going to fix it later. And the other thing that I can do, just for now to show you a little bit more, I can take the opacity down, take my brush up, and take one more little pass at this, and you can see that that will help to just sort of blend those rocks in to the ground as if they're sort of falling into the ground. If I did it 100%, it could look really odd. If I go down to this opacity, and we're going to do some other tricks too. If I go down in the opacity, it just sort of looks more like it's blending in. Okay, I want to go around that bush. Okay, cool. Now we still have this area up here, and let's go ahead and zoom in. Always zoom in. I'm going to just correct that a little bit. And again, these are things, these side areas, I probably would spend a good amount of time on. But for now, I'm going to leave them be for the demonstration. I'm going to take the hardness up just a little bit when I get up to this area because I want to be able to get close to that edge, but without erasing the railroad itself. There we go. I'm going to take some of that green out. Now, I probably can just go in with some selective color and work on that green, but again, I'm not going to get quite that involved right now. Okay, good. Now let's do another transformation on this railroad. So we'll go back to Command T, and this time I want to actually play with the warp tool, because the warp tool is going to let me try to just change the curve of this a little bit and pull it as if it's turning and going into the trees. Now remember, the warp tool is kind of trippy. It's got these wonderful handles. And so you can see I can really play with, it's going to be fun. Yes, so I can just play with the direction it's going, pull it around until it's going through those trees. And I like that much better. Make sure it's right up at the horizon line. There we go. Now, I'm doing this fairly quickly. This tool is a little bit, don't want it that way. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. This tool is a little bit squirrely, so if it doesn't operate this well to start with, trust me, I understand. It doesn't always do everything nicely for me either. I'm going to zoom out for a second. So I just want to see, I think I could pull it out here. Yep, definitely. Give it a little bit of a tweak there. A little tweak here. And that looks nice. I'm going to go ahead and accept that transformation. So things are getting better already. Now, let's go ahead and go back in. You can see we're still going to have to do some adjustments here. This actually sort of goes into this mist, and there's no mist in Joshua Tree. So there's other things I'm going to be needing to do with that area. I'm not going to get into those complications now. I will go back in, go into my brush tool, and let's just get a little bit tighter on that. Make it a little bit harder. Now, you're hardly ever going to use your brush absolutely fully hard because it usually ends up, looking a little bit jagged. But I'm going much harder here because I can see that I really need to get very tight and close to that edge. Oh, that's much better. Same thing below here. And again, I'm zooming in. Don't want to do that too blindly. And as I get to these other areas, I want to make sure and soften it up. And right now my opacity is still at 49%, which is working pretty well for me. I might want to go back up 100%, a little bit harder. See if we can get rid of, oh, there we go. Yeah, that was my opacity, and I'm always doing that. I tell my students not to do it, and then I do it. That gets rid of a little bit of that mistiness up there. Oops. And again, because I am going and lifting, I didn't have to backtrack all the way on that. Let's just move. Oops. There we go. I want to move the whole image over. There we go. Okay. And let's take a look at the whole thing. This is looking pretty good. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do here with cleaning up this edge, making it blend in a little bit better, and matching these colors to each other. But this is a really good start for the transformation. So I've gone ahead and made a few more adjustments to the image just to get that railroad to blend in a little bit better in terms of its color. I'll show you what I've done. I don't want to demonstrate it for you. It's a little bit advanced, but I've added a second curves layer. So before we were here, and this looked pretty good down here, but as we went up here, it started to look kind of fuzzy and fadey because there was a lot of mist in the image that I brought that in from. If I adjusted all of the curves on that layer, it was going to get too dark and too high contrast here. So I really needed to be able to add another curves layer and just adjust the top. And I did that through this gradient filter. This is a way of just adding a gradient filter. I'll show you what this looks like on just part of the image so that it only applies that that application just over here. And of course, this is clipped. And if you take this mask off, you'll see that it would get too dark down at the bottom. But if I just mask that out a little bit, it blends in. Now I want to do one last thing before the end of this video, and that is to show you how to do a partial transformation. This can get really tricky, but it can be very, very useful. So looking at the railway, I really like how things are going, but it just doesn't look right here. It's too straight. And when I had the transform on the entire layer, I couldn't really tweak just that little area. Now there are a few different ways to do it, but one way is to do a selection and transform it. I'm just going to grab my rectangular marquee tool, and I want to make sure I'm on that layer and on the pixel layer. And I'm just going to select that area that is super straight. This area here, you run a risk. If you start playing with this corner, it's going to split the thing apart. So we want to be careful. I'm going to do a Command T, and you notice it only is going to operate in that area. I'm going to go right to warp because I know that warp is the most powerful tool. I'm going to stay away from this corner because that's where I could end up breaking it apart. And I'm just going to tweak here and notice, oh, I love that. See how that pulled that down? Now it looks like it's starting to disappear and I kind of like the effect, but the reason why it's sort of vanishing is because it's pulling it away from the mask that's already there. That's fine. You'll see that I actually end up liking the effect because it's as if the railroad is disappearing into the brush, but I will adjust the mask a little bit. Okay, I'm going to hit return, deselect, make sure we didn't do any damage over here, and it looks good. We didn't split the railway apart. That can happen sometimes if you tweak the wrong corner. I'll go into the mask and let's zoom in again because we want to be careful. And we just need to hit the brush key. And let's take this down. Let's double check. Opacity 100, hardness about right. And we want it to be on black. And let's just go here. Oops. And we want it to default to black. There we go. And make sure we're on the right layer. Brush tool. And oops. And you know what I did, of course? I put it on the pixel layer. So let's Command Z and we'll go to the mask and make sure we're on black. And there we go. And now we can very carefully, I'm going to take that down a little bit more. We don't need quite that much. Very carefully run this along. And again, if you screw up, which is highly likely, I think I'm going to actually make that a little bit softer. If you screw up, you can always go back and fix it. And I'm just going to take that area out. I'm going to go ahead and let it sort of vanish below. That was sort of a happy accident. That was because the mask is down there. But as it turns out, and I want to be careful there, that actually is nice because it makes it look like the railway is going behind the bend. I'm going to go ahead and take this very end of it out so it looks like it's disappearing. And voila. I'm pretty happy with that. Still could do a lot of work, but gives you an idea of other strategies for transformations.